So I chose to preach about a troublesome passage in the New Testament, one that I never preached on because I was too afraid of it. And as I prepared to give this at the 8 o'clock service, I was really sorry I picked it because it's very challenging. But I think we're going to get a blessing out of it. Let me tell you a little bit about the passage. In this particular passage of Scripture, Jesus is leaving Jewish territory. And he's going across a lot of different boundaries and barriers to meet other folks. So he is leaving familiar Jewish area to Gentile area. Says he's exhausted, and he goes to a house, probably a Jewish house, to rest. And before he could rest very long, he is confronted by a woman, which he's not supposed to have much contact with as a Jewish rabbi, and a woman from another culture, another religious background, who walks right into the house and makes a demand of him for a healing, which is not super uncommon in the Gospels. But the interesting thing about this story, which makes it challenging, is when the healing is requested, Jesus pretty much says no. Not going to do it. And we'll see how this story works out. Let's listen to it.
Mark 7:24-30. He went up from there away into the region of Tyre. He went into a house. He wanted no one to know. There was no hiding him. Bang! A woman heard about him. A woman whose daughter had an unclean spirit. She came. She fell at his feet. The woman was a Gentile, Syrophoenician by birth. She asked him to cast the demon out of her daughter. He tried to say to her, "Let the children be stuffed first, for it is not good to take the children's bread and throw it to the dogs." But she answered, says to him, she does, "Sir, even the dogs under the table eat the children's breadcrumbs." And he said to her, "Because of this word, go. The demon has come out of your daughter." And after she went into her house, she found the child thrown upon the bed, the demon gone.
I was sitting in my office the other day, and being a church bureaucrat, I was surrounded by my precious files. This is what I do. We are Methodists, and if you break that down, we have a method, and that means everything has a place, and it's my job to make sure everything is in that place. So I was sitting among my files. Each file represented a deadline or something to do. Now, I can't tell you that what I do makes any sense when I get out of that office, but that's what I do every day. One of my friends who was sitting in the office with me once looked at me doing what I kind of do for a living, and he said, "You know what? You're nothing but an ordained file clerk." And that's my friend. So I was sitting in my office, and if you're a bureaucrat of any kind, a church bureaucrat, what you're looking for is timeliness and order. That's what you want. What you hate is interruption, because you're trying to make something happen, right? Everything lined up. So I was sitting there amongst my files, and I heard a voice. And even as I tell you that now, I am not sure that if you were there, you would have heard anything. And I'm not sure I know what this voice was all about. But here is what I heard, and I'm going to tell you what I heard, and here's what I heard. I heard this. I heard a voice say, "The people need a word." I looked in the file, seeing who might have said that. And I said, "How's that again?" And the voice said, the people need a word. And I said, you mean like my people or all people or what people? And the voice said, the people need a word. I said, you mean need like not just want, but need like a hungry person needs food or a thirsty person needs water? And then the voice said, the people need a word. I see, you mean like a real word, a true word amongst all the other words we listen to, all the other noise we've got to sort through in our lives? The people need a word that is self-authenticating, a word that is true, a word that will convict, disrupt, will tear down to the foundations, but yet at the same time build up, cut new understanding, new avenues of truth, like that kind of word. Well, that's what I heard in my office, sitting amongst my files. But here's the truth, friends. We know this intuitively, don't we? We do need a word, right? Or else we wouldn't be here today. Because we know we are not self-sufficient in and of ourselves, right? We know that in and of ourselves, we long for completion somewhere else. We know if we just continue to talk to ourselves, we're going to talk ourselves into a disaster. So we know that we need a word. Now, my daughter Dana was like a sophomore in college, and she was writing a paper in world religions, and she asked for help. My first child was a chemistry major. I was no help to him. My second child is an engineering major. No help to him. Finally, I could help out. So what she was supposed to do in this paper on world religion is she was supposed to take some idea or concept common to two world religions and compare and contrast them in a paper. Does that make sense? One idea, compare and contrast them. So we talked about it, researched it, and here is our title. I'm so proud of this title. It sounds like a college paper. Just listen to this. A diagnosis of the human flaw is found in Taoism and Christianity. A diagnosis of the human flaw is found in Taoism and Christianity. And the basic premise of the paper was this: if there was nothing wrong with us, we wouldn't need a religion. Right? There's something wrong with us, right? Are you with me this far? And if there was nothing wrong with us, we could look around and say, well, if there's nothing wrong with the world, all religions would have just fallen into disuse. But turn on the television or look into your own heart, and I don't know about you, but it seems like something's wrong. We got done with the paper, and my daughter, my beautiful daughter, I looked into her blue eyes, and my daughter is like my heart outside my body. You got somebody like that in your life? Got all done with this paper, and she looked at me and she said, Dad, you think that after all the time we've been working on this, things would be going a little better? Have you thought that? My daughter laid a word on me, didn't she? That disrupted everything that I thought. Turn on the television, and the civil unrest in Paris looks just like the civil unrest in Ferguson. And if you live long enough like I have, the civil unrest in Ferguson looks just like the civil unrest of the 1960s that I lived through. The only difference is the police updated their equipment. And you just sit and you wonder if we're going to have the resources to deal with these problems. The school I attended, Riverview Gardens High School, which is right next to Ferguson, that whole school district is unaccredited. No one knows what to do about it. You think about the things we counted on. We think about the government, and we find out that like 13% of the people trust the Congress. You go right up the street from where I live now in Sunset Hills, And the mall there, which used to have 100 stores and employ all those people, is completely empty and is going to be. And no one knows what to do with it. Smartest people in the world probably thinking about this, don't know what to do. And I don't know about you, but sometimes when I take a break from my files, I sit in my office and here's what I think. We just don't have enough. We just don't have enough. We don't have enough imagination. We don't have enough creativity. We don't have enough brains. We don't have enough wisdom. We don't have enough money. We don't have enough hope. We don't have enough unified purpose. We just don't have enough to face these problems. And we feel like there's a scarcity of everything. Well, if you felt that way, the Gospel of Mark is for you. Because it was written to a people, received by a people whose entire world was shattered. And here's what happened to them. The Roman Empire took over their country, tore down their temple. The temple was the place where they received forgiveness of sins and got right with God. They didn't have that anymore. I don't know about you, but if I was living then, I would perceive that to be a problem. You look at the very beginning of Mark's gospel, no cute baby stories, no shepherd, no baby Jesus, no wise men. Right to the point. This is the good news of Jesus Christ, the Son of God. You might think that the Romans are in charge. That's not where the action is. You read down just a few verses. You've got John the Baptist, who says, guess what? I'm preaching a baptism for the forgiveness of sins. I know you're kind of tore up about the temple, but that wasn't the last word. The Roman armies took over that community, that culture. They put up the symbols of their Roman cult everywhere. There were soldiers on every street corner, and believe me, they did not care about the niceties of the Miranda rights. The folks were taxed into submission. They had subsistent lives. They had nothing. John the Baptist talks about forgiveness of sins, and Jesus comes with the word that these people needed, and he drew them out into the wilderness and preached to them. And at the end of the day, when the preaching seminar was over, and there were 5,000 of them, and they didn't have anything to eat, Jesus took 5 loaves and 2 fish and fed them. Which brings us to our story. Jesus went into this spot, exhausted, without resources. And before he could expel his first human sigh, bam, 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 a woman's at the door. And she is desperate because she's a mom and her kid is sick, possessed by a demon, and nobody can help her. And she goes to Jesus and asks for a cure. And desperate means exhausted. And Jesus says this, haven't you heard? There's not enough to go around. I just left 5,000 people that we fed. They're hungry for a word. The Romans are in charge. I'm exhausted. It's not right, strategically, for me to take the rarity of bread and give it to a dog like you. Now get this. The woman says, this is why this is a challenging scripture. The woman says, don't give me that. You're the bread maker. I know what you did with that 5,000 and the 5 loaves and the 2 fishes. Don't tell me that you're short of resources. And Jesus is taken back. And he says to her, usually when there's a healing in the Gospels, he says, it's because of your faith. But this time he says, because of your word, of what you said, your daughter is healed. In this amazing bit of scripture, what happened is that Gentile woman preached Jesus' sermon and mission back to him. And her daughter was healed. Can you imagine? If you read into the 8th chapter, Jesus goes out preaching the word, not to Jewish folks this time, but to Gentiles, gathers 4,000, same drill, out of food, takes bread, listen to the language, blesses it, breaks it, gives it away, and there's enough for everybody. The woman said to him, you're the bread maker. There's just a few crumbs under the table here. A few crumbs in your hands is enough, Jesus. And then she says, you know what I suspect? You do some of your best work in out-of-the-way places. You do your best work under the table, don't you? And sure enough, 4,000 people are fed. So it comes back to us. What does this mean to us? Well, here's what I think. You can fill in your story. I bet you're facing some scarcity in your life. Somewhere, interpersonally. I go to different churches every week. I hear churches that say they just don't have enough. Scarce resources. Don't have enough. We've got school systems wondering if they have enough, and municipalities if there's enough understanding and grace for each other. What are we going to do? We're going to put our crumbs in the hand of the bread maker, right? This is all I got. That's going to be enough in Jesus' hands. Let me tell you a brief story. I know a group that raised $28,000. $28,000 a lot of money? Sometimes, right? I remember when I first got married, if I made $28,000, it would have been a big deal. And I still really don't have $28,000 just laying around. But I have purchased a car for about that much, right? Some way or another. So $28,000 is the number we can wrap our minds around, right? I'll tell you what group that was. That was this church right here. And they took those crumbs of $28,000, which on, some level doesn't sound like a whole lot, and took it to Mozambique and put it in the hands of the bread maker and built a school. And what do you think that's going to mean to all those people? You can't even imagine those generations that are going to be changed by that. And I was talking about this the other day to a group, and somebody from this church came up to me. And I was saying, I got this sermon I'm giving in Manchester, I don't know how to finish it. And she said, do you know that there's a group from this church that goes every month to Ferguson and has dinner and shops? Can you imagine that? How much is dinner in Ferguson? $40? Maybe, right? Maybe less. 50? Get the appetizer? 50? $50 brings you into communion with people in a whole nother place. And it changes everything. So what are you going to do about the issue in Ferguson? You know what to do? I'm taking my crumbs. I'm taking $40. I'm giving it to the bread maker. And we're going to cross those boundaries. And Jesus is going to change the world. That's the word for the people that we needed. Take this time to be with God.